And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of New York State Sports here on IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all this sports, episode 69. Ricky K in the house with you again, just a couple more shows in 2024. And coming up on today's show, the Yankees, their plan B starts to form a little bit, bringing in a couple of new pitchers, one for the rotation, one for the bullpen. We'll talk about both of those, one signing, one trade. What does it mean and what's their next moves to come? The Mets formally introduced Juan Soto. We could finally put that signing to bed, so to speak. And what are the Mets' next options? Why does nobody want Pete Alonso? We'll talk about that. The Jets get our first New York football win since Halloween. They beat Jacksonville. Was it good? Was it bad for the franchise? We'll talk about it. The Giants get blown out by the Ravens, but finally throw a passing touchdown. And should both New York football teams have actually been in the Bill Belichick market as he decides to go coach at North Carolina? We'll talk about the Knicks getting a big win in Orlando last night. The Rangers continue to slide. Are more changes coming from Madison Square Garden to the Blue Shirts? Islanders, Devils, Nets make a trade with Golden State. We'll talk Army-Navy. We'll talk Rutgers buzzer beating over Seton Hall. We'll talk the CBS Sports Classic coming up this weekend. And Lake Placid might be getting some Winter Olympics in 26. We'll dive into all that next on New York State Sports. We'll see you in just a minute. And of course, welcome back to New York State Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. Ricky K with you. Hope you're enjoying your Monday. It's a little cloudy and rainy here in the New York, New Jersey area, but still some good things here in New York sports that we're going to talk about over the next hour plus. I'm happy to spend it with each and every one of you. I want to remind you, of course, that you can follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Go to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to all of our shows. We go live on YouTube every day. Basically, we have like 3, 4, 5 shows a day. It's really fantastic what we have. Each show has its own page. Go to iesportsradio.com/New York State Sports. You can find more about me, more about the show. If you miss any portion of the show or you just want to hear me talk again, you can download the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, all that fun stuff. Reminder, of course, you can follow me on X at McNader555, or you could follow the show on X at NY State Sports IE. And if you feel inclined to talk about any of the topics I'm talking about, join me here on YouTube, send a comment, question. Always happy to hear from you and join in on the conversation. So we will take our first break here from our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Seal the Deal Wax. There's a little word from the main man behind the network, Larry B. And we will come back and talk baseball, leading with baseball for the second straight week. The Mets made their move, and now the Yankees starting to make moves of their own, going after the starting pitching and the closer. So that's all coming up next here on New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all of the sports. We will see you in just a few minutes.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And of course, thank you to our great sponsors here at IE Sports Radio. It's only 9 days till Christmas or Hanukkah. Make sure you get maybe your significant others or loved ones, friends, family, maybe a basket of some Planet Jerky premium brisket beef jerky. Always a good snack to have while you're watching some football or any sporting event. Of course, those holiday cards, make sure you use Seal the Deal Wax Seals to add that special touch to those holiday cards. And of course, check out our shop. Check out some hats, t-shirts. Maybe you're looking for a last-minute holiday gift. IE Sports Radio has that for you. So we're going to start with the Yankees. And I think the interesting thing to look at is we were wondering, okay, what is the Yankees' plan B after losing Juan Soto? They had to go out and had to go a different direction. And they elect to start, at least right now, because this plan B is still forming. Remember, we're still 2.5 months away from the start of spring training. There are still moves to be made. And what Brian Cashman, I think, does as well as any GM in the sport is he goes out there and he kind of loves to build strength, add on to a strength. Sometimes it comes at the cost of not adding to a weakness. Left field has been one for years that the Yankees never really seem to address, for example. But they went out and acquired a pair of pitchers. Now, one of them is not official yet, and it was reported last week. So it's kind of a little interesting that hasn't been wrapped up yet. But the reported deal, at least will start in the starting pitching market, is Max Fried, the lefty from the Atlanta Braves. 8 years, $218 million, the largest contract ever for a left-handed pitcher. And it's, I think, the fourth highest pitching contract in history. Now, a couple of things to know on Max Fried, two-time All-Star, and this is a pitcher that he's going to give you length in games. He has 5 complete games over the last 4 years. He has started 28 or more games in 3 of the last 4 years. And the one thing that makes Fried so successful, and I think what's going to help him at Yankee Stadium, he's very good at getting hitters to hit the ball on the ground. Last year, he had a 58% ground ball rate. He has 16% fly ball rate, which is the lowest in his career. So he's coming off that kind of a season. That's going to fit well for Yankee Stadium. If there's one negative with Fried, he's made 20 postseason appearances. He's got an ERA of 5.10. Not exactly what Yankee fans are looking for in terms of that big game pitcher behind Gerrit Cole. However, Fried did win a World Series in 21 with the Atlanta Braves. So he has that title in his back pocket. And I think when you look at the Yankees now with this rotation, Cole, Fried, Rodon, it's a very strong 1-2-3. You are not going to find many rotations, at least top threes, that are as well as those guys. And I think adding Max Fried also helps because the Yankees needed to add a pitcher because let's see what happens with Gerrit Cole, who dealt with some injuries last year, had the whole thing with the opt-out and the contract situation with the Yankees. What is his arm going forward? We're going to see. So adding Fried, who's 31 years old, still in the prime of his career, I think makes a lot of sense. You can argue about the money, but the offer is out there. Joel Sherman had it in the Post that the Red Sox and the Rangers were big. It was $190 million over 7. It took the 8th year to get it done for the Yankees. And it sounded like Fried was impressed with the Yankees over their Zoom calls. They brought a lot of people on from the organization. And look, he is a pitcher that I think fans are going to like his consistency. He may not be dominant at times, but I think he's a higher end consistency. Clark Schmidt is the lower end consistency. You kind of know the baseline. Fried's got a very high baseline. Now he's got to stay healthy. He has battled some injuries over the last few years. But I don't think when you look at it, people look at the price tag for $218 million and say this is too much money. I don't think so. I thought the Rodon contract at the time was too much because Rodon had one good year. At least you're seeing with Fried, he has the track record of multiple years where he's been really good. His ERA over the last 4 years has been one of the best in baseball, if you look at it from its totality, with Cole right behind him. So Fried's consistency earns this contract. Rodon had one good year and got $160 million out of it from the Yankees. And I think they're still regretting that contract somewhat. Fried at least has earned that. Now, when you add to a starting pitching rotation that's already loaded, you got to have to subtract them in some way. And the Yankees were going to use that depth to make moves, which they did. They go out and make a trade Friday with the Brewers. They get Devin Williams in exchange for Nestor Cortez, who was one of those very lovable Yankee players with fans. Loved his quirky delivery, was always that big game guy, loved pitching here. He goes to Milwaukee to help that rotation for sure. The Yankees give up Caleb Durbin, the player that Brian Cashman was talking about ad nauseum, as a player that could either come off the bench or fill in at second base. But the Yankees hyped up Durbin. He goes to Milwaukee, and the Yankees also give some cash considerations in the deal. But Devin Williams, this is the guy they can move for. And yes, he's a free agent at the end of the year, but he's a consistent closer. All-star in 2 of the last 3 years, 68 saves in his career. Now, that's low for 6 years, but you have to remember he was the setup man for Josh Hader at the beginning of his career. He's got one of the nastiest changeups in the league. And what it does is it allows the Yankees now to put Luke Weaver back in that Michael King hybrid, multiple innings kind of role, which he did very well before Clay Holmes started struggling last year. Remember, Weaver became the closer by default. I wouldn't have minded if the Yankees said, you know what, let's make Luke Weaver the guy and just surround him with setup men. But when Devin Williams becomes available and the Brewers don't want to pay him, you have to make this move. And it gives the Yankees, I think, a top 5 closer at least in the game. So, yes, they haven't improved the offense just yet, but they've added to the rotation. They've added to the bullpen. I think they're going to make another move or two in the bullpen market, whether that's bringing back Tommy Kahnle, bringing back Tim Hill, making a move for a guy like a Tanner Scott or a Carlos Estevez. There are relievers out there that they could make a move for and help the team. But the question is, what's next for the Yankees? We've seen Cody Bellinger thrown out there, and Arun Adam Karnik from Chi-Town Weekly. I was talking with him about a half hour before the show, talking about is the Bellinger stuff going to get done. I think it will. There's too much smoke between the Yankees and the Cubs to not have this happen. Bellinger has 2 years left in his deal at $52 million. And from all accounts, it sounds like the issue with the Yankees and Cubs is how much money the Yankees are going to take on. Remember, the Yankees don't want to spend over $300 million in payroll to go under the Steve Cohen tax. I'm sure they've talked about prospects. I'm sure they've talked about those kind of moves and what Cody Bellinger would be. He's not the missing piece because I thought Kyle Tucker could be before he went to the Cubs, but the Astros were never going to trade Kyle Tucker to the Yankees unless they got absolutely blown away by it. What Bellinger would do is he could either play center field, which would move Aaron Judge back to right field, which I think is the goal for the Yankees for 25, or put Bellinger at first base. They desperately need a first baseman. If they don't get Cody Bellinger, there's guys like Nathaniel Lau, Josh Naylor, Carlos Santana. I don't think they would be in the Pete Alonso market necessarily. I think they're looking for more affordable options at first base that maybe aren't the impact players, but remember, the Yankees didn't get a home run from a first baseman past July 31st last year. Any upgrade they make at first base is going to be better than what they had. And it supports Ben Rice as well. Could make Ben Rice expendable in a trade. There's been talk of Alex Bregman for third base. I think that looms large because now the Yankees traded away Durbin, they're definitely going to be looking for a third baseman, I think, to move Jazz Chisholm back to second base. We'll see what Alex Bregman is. It doesn't sound like the Astros are going to bring him back because they got Isaac Paredes in the Tucker deal. I just don't see if the Yankees doling out $180 million for Bregman. I think Bregman's going to be a guy that maybe waits till January to get a deal, because if the Astros don't want to bring him back, that's kind of a red flag for other teams. Like, why would you go out and overpay Alex Bregman if the Astros aren't making that significant of an effort to bring him back? So there's that option the Yankees have. They could also look to Nolan Arenado if he decides he wants to waive his no trade to go there, but Arenado, kind of aging player, but I think helps defensively. The point is there's a lot of options so the Yankees could go, but I love the Max Fried and Devin Williams moves for them. It just makes too much sense. Now you look at the Mets. They introduced Juan Soto last week, big show in Queens, and I want to talk about Juan Soto. Look, there's so many different reports. I don't doubt that money wasn't the only reason, but I still think money was the biggest reason why Soto chose the Mets. You heard talk that he wanted a suite from the Yankees. The Mets gave him that suite, but the Yankees never gave Aaron Judge a suite. They never gave Derek Jeter a suite. There is no reason that Juan Soto should get a suite. The Yankees, I think, realized, like, hey, why am I going to give this guy what I didn't give the other guys? And I think Juan Soto wanted to be courted. He wanted to be the premier guy, and the Yankees weren't going to do that. They didn't have to be in a position to do that. The Mets had to do this. They had to get that premier player. They get him. Great story. Now you have, I think, your future with Lindor and Immo and Soto. The question is, what's next for the Mets, who haven't made a significant move since then? Which, again, you're not going to sit here and rip them. They don't make a move every week. But the question to me is why isn't Pete Alonso more attractive to teams? Of course, Scott Boras is his agent. That could also be a reason Boras maybe now focusing more on the Alonso front. But the Mariners, maybe your team would look at them, but they have to kind of clear money, and maybe they trade Luis Castillo to do it. You look at a team like the Nationals, who could be a piece or two away, but they could be looking more short-term with Christian Walker. Remember, the Yankees got scared off on Walker because they don't want to give up picks on top of picks. Remember, they're giving up 2 picks for free. They would have to give up 2 more picks for Walker. That's why I think they're going to be out on the Christian Walker front. But that's a team looking for a first baseman. The Cubs, everyone thought Chicago. We haven't heard anything. And is that because Pete is more valuable to the Mets? Because he's a homegrown player. He has more cachet with the Mets than he does anywhere else. And I think that's probably part of it. I mean, that's why I think Steve Cohen, is going to eventually re-sign him, because I don't think his market is there. I think the Mets can get him back on their terms. Steve Cohen is going to appeal to the Met fan because he is one of them. David Stern is going to look at it and say, do I want to pay a first baseman this much money? As good as Pete Alonso is, he goes through his stretches where he's slumping, not that great a player, and strikes out a lot. Not the greatest defensive first baseman. He's okay. But the point is the Mets are looking, I think, to bring him back. I think they'll find a way. It might take a while, but I think they'll find a way to bring him back for sure. The other interesting thing is starting pitching. The Mets still need that. Maybe we see them getting the Walker Buehler sweepstakes. But I think that the bigger play is it sounds like they're interested in bringing back Sean Manaea. How much money does Sean Manaea make in the market? You just saw Luis Severino get $67 million over 3 years. You saw the Fried deal we just talked about. I don't think Manaea is in the Fried market by any means, but I think he's going to get a significant chunk of change from a team. But the Mets need that number 1A, number 2 kind of pitcher, especially with Kodai Senga not pitching much all of last year outside of the playoffs and one regular season game. They need that guy to kind of be that stabilizer in the rotation. So to me, I think Sean Manaea just makes too much sense to bring back for this rotation that would have Senga, that has David Peterson, that has Frankie Montas, that has Clay Holmes trying to be a starter again. I don't doubt they can look into the reliever market still. I think they could use a setup man option behind Edwin Diaz if they want to keep Holmes as a starter the bulk of the year. We'll see. But there's still so much moves. I think people look at the offseason, they look at the winter meetings as that baseline. There's still so much more that has to get done. Remember, Corbin Burns is still a free agent. So Anthony Santander is still a free agent. There's so many moves that still have to get done. And that's why you have to be patient when you look at a baseball offseason. But as good as the Mets move is, if they did promise Juan Soto a player, they're going to get Juan Soto another player. I just think it's going to be Pete Alonso more than it's Alex Bregman. Because if it's Bregman, then you got to talk about maybe moving Vientos to first base. Then you got to talk about Brett Beatty trade. And things get very complicated. I don't doubt they're working on some of those things. I'm sure they would have loved to get Garrett Crochet, but he goes to the Red Sox for the rotation. Maybe they get in on the rookie Sasaki stuff in January. We'll see. But I think if you're the Mets, it's looking at Pete and looking at the rotation, I think, are the two next moves for them. So we'll take our first break. We'll come back. We'll talk some football. The Jets finally let me talk about a win, which is going to be pretty cool to actually talk some success in New York football to an extent. Giants have a debacle, and should both New York football teams have been in on Bill Belichick, who decides to take his talents to college and coach North Carolina? You're listening to New York State of Sports and iSports Radio, your direct feed for all those sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey, Cleveland and Columbus sports fans. This is Jen D, host of the Show of the Land on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in live to the Show of the Land on Tuesdays, where we will cover the Cleveland Browns, Cavs, Guardians, and Monsters. We will also talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, Crew, Fury, and of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll also cover other colleges in the area like Akron, Kent State, Cleveland State, Mount Union, John Carroll, Baldwin Wallace, Youngstown State, among others. So like I said, if you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in Tuesdays to the Show of the Land with Jen D on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And of course, welcome back here to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K in the house with you today, and so much to get into. Like we have our fun set, some of our great IE Sports hosts here in the chat with me today. Ralph is in the house. Ralph, how are you? Yep, he is still soaked that the Mets signed one. So I would be as well. Again, you're not looking for moves that are necessarily going to happen every week. So Met fans should definitely embrace that over the next months, weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun going on over there. Adam Karnick, you just heard Chi-Town Weekly, which will be on later tonight. Thank you for the generosity of both the Rangers and Islanders giving the Blackhawks 4 points. We're going to get into the Rangers and Islanders in a bit, but there's a lot of chaos with New York hockey right now. And Taryn Rodriguez, of course, is here. So our SoCal show, as well as Set Point. Set Point you could hear tonight as well. We got a jam-packed lineup on Mondays now. And the Jets finally give you a win to talk about at the cost of draft capital. And yes, that is true. And we'll get into that. But the Jets finally get a win, their first since Halloween. They beat the Jaguars 32-25. In what was a really tale of two half kind of football game. The Jets looked awful in the first half. Jaguars led 13-7. Mac Jones had a touchdown in the opening drive. Jaguars had the ball to start the game. 7 minutes they scored. Jets had a 1-point lead going to the fourth, and you saw 24 combined points in the fourth quarter. And it was a reminder of what could have been with this group. Look, Aaron Rodgers threw 3 touchdowns yesterday, but Davante Adams was the story. He had 9 catches for 198 and 2 touchdowns, but 131 of those yards came in the final 4 minutes of the game, including a 71-yard touchdown. So you could look at a vacuum with Adams and say, this is what the Jet fan hoped for when they traded for him. You still saw some disconnect yesterday with Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. Wilson got missed on a ball and then went to receivers coach Sean Jefferson, started talking about some things. So it's still not all great with the Jets offense, but at least you saw what could have been when Aaron Rodgers gets time in the pocket. He had only got sacked 1 time yesterday. And at least you know with the Jets going forward, Fashanu looks to be a bright spot in this offensive line. Since filling in for the injured Tyron Smith, he's done a really good job on the left side of that line. This is a Jet team that does have Vera Tucker on the line. So there are building blocks for this team to build on. You still got Breece Hall. You still got Isaiah Davis, who had 5 carries yesterday. Braylon Allen barely saw the ball. You're clearly seeing the Jets continue looking to throw, which is still weird when you have a 40-year-old quarterback back there. And they didn't have Tyler Conklin yesterday. Jeremy Ruckert got the start at tight end. So there was still some things going on with the Jets offense. You still haven't seen them put 4 quarters together all year. They'll put a good half together. They'll put building blocks. And I understand that fans are going to be upset that this was the game that they decided to win. But as I said last week, you can't lose to the Jaguars. You can't. You want to be in a position to get that quarterback. But when you look at Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, do you want to take Jalen Milroe in the top 10? Maybe you trade up into the end of the first round or Quinn Ewers or something like that. Right now, I'm looking for this team to get some wins. That, at least get a win because their last 3 games are going to be absolutely miserable. So I'm looking for to get some wins. And the defense did a good job yesterday as well. They had 2 picks coming into the year and coming into this game, and they got 2 on Mac Jones yesterday. One of them coming from Jalen Mills and the other at the end of the game from Sauce Gardner. So the Jets were finally able to force some turnovers, which is a big key for this team. They've had to do that. They did get a couple sacks on Mac Jones yesterday. And I thought it was a big key to actually beat Mac Jones for the first time in a while. We hadn't seen them do that. And as Adam says, you can't lose to the Mac Jones-led Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, I think if the Jets had lost this game, you get it, you understand it. But the Jaguars were so bad a week ago that even if the Jets had 4-13, you had to win this football game just to prevent any more doom and gloom. Now, next week, a lot tougher test. They will host the Los Angeles Rams. Rams trying to win the NFC West. This is a huge game for them, 1 o'clock on CBS at MetLife Stadium. So we'll see if the Jets can bounce back. Now, there was some news this week off the field for the Jets. Rich Cimini reported on Sunday from ESPN. The Jets are looking to begin their GM search. They are going to talk to John Robinson, former GM in Tennessee, and they're going to talk to Louis Riddick, who formerly with the Eagles personnel works for ESPN. To me, Louis Riddick is the fit for this Jet team that really needs to build through the draft. Riddick is one of the best people to watch when it comes to draft stuff, I think, on ESPN. He deserves a GM job. I love hearing his opinions on football. And yes, I get it. They need to see if the GM and the coach align. But if that is the case, to me, you start with the GM and then you work your way to head coach. So Riddick, to me, makes the most sense. There's going to be a lot more candidates involved as the search is getting underway. Of course, being helped by Mike Tannenbaum. We've talked about the optics of that being interesting, but time will tell as to what that happens for the New York Jets. But at least they have gotten that search underway in replace of Joe Douglas. The Giants, well, what can you really say about the Giants that we haven't said all season long? Look, they were 16-point underdogs yesterday. There was no shock they were going to lose that game to the Ravens. Ravens, of course, maybe the Giants would have got lucky that they were going to look ahead to the big matchup with the Steelers on Saturday, and that did not happen. Lamar Jackson was incredible. 21 of 25 for 290, 5 touchdowns. He had more touchdowns than incompletions. Really changed the game. Lamar even fumbled on the opening drive, and the Giants couldn't do anything with it. So the Ravens spotted you a turnover early. You did nothing. Lamar had the 13-yarder to Andrews to begin the game, then the 49-yarder to Bateman. He throws another one to Bateman at the end of the first half. Devontae Walker caught touchdown the third. Justice Hill caught one the fourth, and Hill had a big kickoff return to begin the game that kind of sparked the Ravens a little bit. Giants don't do much on offense. Devin Singletary had the 2-yard touchdown at the end, toward the end of the second quarter. Tommy DeVito ends up leaving the game due to getting a concussion. He only threw for 68 yards on 10 of 13. The Giants go to Tim Boyle, and I said Jets because Tim Boyle was a Jet last year. And Tim Boyle ends up throwing a touchdown to Malik Neighbors at the end of the fourth quarter, a 23-yarder. It was the first Giants passing touchdown since November 3rd, which is mind-boggling to me that it took that long for the Giants to have a passing touchdown. But in a league, it should be so easy to throw touchdowns. And they can't seem to figure out a way to do that. Like that to me is just embarrassing. That Tim Boyle could come in and actually look competent throwing a ball. But you look at Joe Shane and Brian Dable, Drew Lock hasn't looked that way. Tommy DeVito hasn't looked that way. Daniel Jones didn't really look that way. So really Boyle's somewhat success in the second half, success in air quotes, really just shines a bad light on this Giant front office, which again, I think they need to clean house. I'm shocked it hasn't happened already, but I don't think John Mara really wants to do that over the next 3 weeks, but time will tell. Now, want to give some shout outs on the defensive side yesterday. Even though the Ravens scored 35 points, you saw guys that I think deserve some credit. Dane Belton, 15 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. He had a strong game. Micah McFadden had 11 tackles and a sack. So both those players are doing well. Brian Burns had a sack yesterday. And you look at Burns' first season with the New York Giants, he has 8 sacks on the season. So he's looking at maybe a double-digit sack year, which should be pretty good for him. Giants will next take on the Falcons. That game is Sunday, 1 o'clock on Fox. Falcons, of course, play tonight in Vegas in the Monday night doubleheader. Look, the only way the Giants are going to stay in this game is if Kirk Cousins gives up some turnovers, because right now they're underdogs by 10.5. Atlanta needs the game in the South, so they have more to play for. Giants, of course, will be rooting like heck for Vegas tonight because they want the inside track at the number 1 pick, which I think they're going to have anyway. I mean, Indianapolis might do some stupid stuff like they did yesterday against Denver. I don't see the Giants winning that game, and then they end the year at the Eagles, who are going to need that game to have any shot at the number 1 seeds. They're not going to really lay down in that one. We didn't mention the Rams and Jets spread as of right now. I was looking at ESPN for that. Rams are favored by 3.5 in that game, which leads to our last football topic being Bill Belichick. And why do I bring up Bill Belichick? Well, he decides to take the head coaching job at North Carolina. There was all the reports this week that Bill Belichick had talked to Mike Tannenbaum about getting involved with the Jet coaching search, and then reportedly, I think this is Albert Breer who talked about it. The Jets told him that they hadn't started the coaching search yet, which is very surprising. You fire the coach after week 5 and you haven't even begun the coaching search. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, Bill Belichick and Woody Johnson don't like each other. We know Bill's bad history with the Jets. But if Bill Belichick wants this job, how do you not, in a sense, decide, okay, this is the guy I want to give the job to? Like, I don't really see at this point in time why you're not giving Bill that opportunity to at least interview. Maybe you pick his brain. Maybe you figure out that some of his secrets, and maybe you actually find a way to get that deal done and really make things work. Like, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. That the Jets haven't really done that. We'll see. But at the same time, I can get the Jets' hesitancy to really talk to Bill Belichick. On the Giants, I don't get. Like, John Mara, to me, if you're looking to bring back a guy that kind of can bring things, if you want to keep it in the Giant family, so to speak, and I know Mara went outside the organization the last time, to me, you would really go toward Bill Belichick and bring some stability. Maybe you don't have Bill Belichick run everything. And I think that's what he wants. And I think that's why he went to college, because he can run this program. But at least make the call. Like, I don't get why these NFL teams haven't even made calls to Bill. Because Bill, to me, represents stability. And I guess these front office owners and executives are really afraid to not have power anymore. That they care more about power than winning. And yes, Belichick had some rough endings with the Patriots. But you watch Mac Jones, and even you see Ralph yesterday saying Mac got giddy after certain plays. Thank God the Jets won. Look at what Bill has done with Mac Jones, getting into the playoffs in his first year, and look how bad Mac is now. Look at with Cam Newton, that team somehow was an over 500 team with Cam, when Cam barely had any practices due to COVID. So that, to me, I think speaks more to what Bill can bring stability to an organization. Maybe you won't win a Super Bowl, but for the Giants and Jets, the bar is so low that you can all of a sudden start to see winning happen. And the fact that Bill can't get these calls, I think he'll be okay at North Carolina. I think he's going to do a good job recruiting, because the one thing it's going to be good for Bill, and you'll hear more about it on Carolina Sports Update later today with Neil Curtis, is going to be he can at least impress the parents in the room, and he's also a pipeline to the NFL. Like, he's going to say, I can sell you, get you to the pros. And he won't get to an ACC title right away, but he'll find success. I think the Jets and Giants, at least missing the opportunity. The fact that you even talked to Bill Belichick, I think is a real disappointment. Did you have to hire him? No. But the fact you didn't talk to him, I'm not a huge fan of that. We'll keep it here. Before we go to our final break, we'll talk Rangers. I think they've been so bad they deserve their second segment. 3-10 in their last 13. They lose yesterday to the Blues. They got down 3-0, worked their way back into it, only to fall short 3-2. And I don't really know where else they turned to. Yesterday, they scratched Capo Caco for some reason. I don't get where that happens. Mika Zibanejad only plays 13 minutes, yet he's on the ice at the end of the game when some of the players that were red hot at the third period weren't on the ice in that 6-on-5. They lose to a bad Blues team, which I know the Blues have been better under Jim Montgomery, but you get swept by them. They embarrassed themselves Saturday against the Kings. They were down 5-1 at the end of the second period. And it's not that the Rangers are losing. It's they're losing with what looks to be zero effort or zero care. And that's a problem. The fact of the matter is, look, I don't like that I'm saying it's time for Peter Laviolette to go, because I don't blame him in any of this. The fact that is the Rangers players aren't listening to him. Because it's clear that this talent, which I think, to me, the Rangers have been, we talk about the Jets' disappointment of a season. This is worse. This is a team that won the President's Trophy last year. This is a team that made it to the Eastern Conference Final last year, kept the whole team in tack outside of Riley Smith and Sam Carrick coming in, and they've been a dumpster fire to begin the year. And everything they tried, the Jacob Trouba stuff didn't work. Chris Drury saying the reports that he was trying to trade people, that didn't work. They tried lineup switches, that didn't work. And as Adam said, it's not that the Rangers have been bad. They're not competitive. And they're not competitive at home. They lost to the Blackhawks the other day. 2-1. They're not even scoring. We're outside of Cully and Brett Berard, who's playing well. We saw Cully, Berard, and Lafreniere on a line yesterday, which I thought was pretty cool, getting the youth involved. But where's the veterans? Chris Kreider's been playing on the third line. And he's been playing with the fourth line over the weekend because he's not playing well. Peter Laviolette is trying to push every button. He's going to get fired at some point, I think. And Chris Drury's not far behind him because Chris Drury missed an opportunity last year to really make a big move because he thought long-term they needed it. He thought they had to save pieces for long-term. And this is why when you have a chance to win, you go for it. Keandre Miller is now on IR. They call up Connor Mackey to the team. You could look at the Rangers misusing Matt Rempe. But to me, and they're going to play Nashville this week. They're going to play Dallas. Then they play New Jersey next Monday right before we go on the air. They've got to change things. And to me, it's not the coach. The coach is going to pay the price. But to me, it's the GM. The GM and the players. The fact that this is a team that was one of the more resilient teams 2 years ago, the last 2 years, they've always been a team that could play well in the second and third, come back in second and third period of games. And this year, when they get down, they fold, and they fold quickly. They don't know how to respond. And how does that change? I don't know. I'm not in that locker room. I can't tell you. But it's an absolute joke. And as Adam says, they're going to start a fire sale first of the year, and they should. Mika doesn't want to move. Maybe they make it so bad for Mika that he wants to move. Maybe Chris Kreider eventually moves. It's time to shake up this group. This group has gone as far as it can go, and that's it. And it's a shame because really this group should have done so much more. I was going to start with them the last segment, but they've been so bad. I think we lump them in with the Jets and Giants because of the dumpster fire that they have been this year. So we'll take one more break. We'll come back. We'll recap the rest of New York sports. We'll do Islanders. We'll do Devils. The Nets make a trade with the Warriors. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk some Army. And I'm going to be really critical of the college football system because I think Army was done a disservice in their bowl selection and then done a disservice by what should have been their bowl opponent. We'll talk all that coming up next here on New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll have our grab bag segment to wrap up episode 69 after this.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph Galise, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate die-hard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold. Have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Galise, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Locke.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, Where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Welcome back here to New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports, episode 69, as we have our grab bag segment here. And those not familiar, as we call our third segment or our final segment the grab bag segment, because we kind of try to lump everything rest of New York sports into one segment when it's not the major topics going on. We'll start with the New York Islanders, who we did Rangers separate because they've just been that bad. The Islanders are tied with the Rangers in points, and what's weird about the Eastern Conference is everybody's still pretty much in. The Islanders are 1 point out of a playoff spot, as well as the Rangers. And the Islanders did get some reinforcements back yesterday. They got Matt Barzal back. They got Adam Pelech back off long-term IR. That's big for this team that desperately needs a jolt. Yesterday, they lose 5-3 to the Blackhawks. Connor Bedard with a goal in the third period. Islanders had tied it on a goal from Dobson in the third, but Chicago was able to score late. And really the Islanders' problem is still their third period situation. They played the Blackhawks on Thursday, got up 5-1, and Chicago made it 5-4 to end that game. And Patrick Waugh was visibly frustrated to the fact that they won, but that game was a lot tougher than it should have been. And their third period problem still exists. And I was reading a tweet from Stefan Rosner earlier today. The Islanders this season, when you look at their power play, they are 8-3 when they score a power play goal, and they're 4-12 when they don't. So clearly the Islanders relying on a lot of special teams for their offense. And I think getting Barzal is going to help with that offense, but still a lot of disappointments there. You've seen Sorokin kind of been used a lot by the Islanders of late. We'll see if that changes. And they've got a little bit of a tough stretch coming up this week. They go to Carolina on Tuesday. That game's on ESPN+. They then go to the Maple Leafs on Saturday, and then they'll wrap up their pre-Christmas schedule with the Sabres at home on Monday. Devils, meanwhile, they are continuing to find success in a big way. They have reached 20 wins, so a good sign for New Jersey. Jesper Bratt has played well. They beat the Kings on Thursday, 3-1. They also picked up a win over the Blackhawks, so prevented the Blackhawks from getting points against all three locals on their trip here. But you got to love the way the Devils have been, and Sheldon Keefe talked about it in his, even Tom Fitzgerald, the GM, had his State of the Union press conference this morning, talking about how the Devils have been more defense-based team. And they've shown that over the last few games. After that debacle against the Avalanche last week, they lose 2-1 to the Maple Leafs in overtime in a game they clearly outshot Toronto in. They hold the Kings to 1 goal, and they hold the Blackhawks to 1 goal. So you're seeing some better signs. This defense has allowed 2 goals or fewer in 4 of the last 5. Again, they reached 20 wins. There was also some news Fitzgerald talked about. They're hoping to get talks with maybe trying to extend Luke Hughes, which would be good for, I guess, keeping the Hugheses together. Devils will be at the Blues on Tuesday. They'll be at the Blue Jackets on Thursday, and then they will host the Penguins on Saturday. So that's their schedule coming up. But right now, the only team in New York, at least hockey-wise, to be excited about in the New York, New Jersey area is the Devils, because I think they're just fun to watch. I really like watching Jack Hughes and watching Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt. They're doing some good things, and you're clearly seeing Sheldon Keefe bringing some stability to a young team that needed it. So shout out to the New Jersey Devils, who, as we head to the new year, really looking like the team that could do some damage in New York, New Jersey hockey. Shout out to the Knicks. Now, they had a disappointing loss against the Hawks, I think, in the NBA Cup quarterfinals, and that was one you're very disappointed to see them lose, because you wanted them to get to the NBA Cup in semifinals in Vegas. You wanted to get that win in that what's the closest thing to a playoff atmosphere in the regular season. You didn't like that Trae Young did the roll the dice stuff after the game, but as Jalen Brunson said, you know how you stop that? You win. The Knicks played an awful third quarter. They really couldn't make a shot, and that did them in. So they get to play an extra game because Orlando lost to Milwaukee. The Knicks had to go to Orlando, and I think you learned more last night than you would have in an NBA Cup game against Milwaukee. Jalen Brunson had 31 points last night. He played well. Karl-Anthony Towns had 22 points and 22 rebounds. Mikal Bridges played in his 500th career game, 17 points for him on 11 shots. Knicks shot 46% from the floor, really only using 8 players. And yes, the Magic are banged up, but they got 32 from Mo Wagner, 20 from De Silva. Knicks have beaten the Magic twice so far. And yes, I said the Magic will be a lot different at the end of the year, but the Knicks have dominated Orlando in 2 big games already, and that's a good sign when you're looking at the playoff picture. The Knicks right now are 3rd in the East. I mean, we could talk about their defensive issues and talk about how they're still working things out. As Kat said earlier this week, we've seen the Heat with LeBron go through kind of these chemistry issues to begin the year. So the fact that the Knicks are going through chemistry issues and defensive issues, and they're still 16-10, and they're still the 3 seed in the East, and outside of Cleveland and Boston, who are combined 43-9, like I don't really know why we're nitpicking the Knicks so much, because at least they're going out there and putting up consistent results. Like you haven't seen that slide from them that you would see with a team going through issues. So they will play Minnesota on Thursday. That game is on TNT at 9:30, the Randall DiVincenzo reunion. They will go play New Orleans on Saturday. New Orleans is 5-22. They're terrible. And they will host the Raptors on Monday. Knicks beat Toronto last week in Canada. It was a crazy finish, but the Knicks found a way to get that done. So that game will be the last before the Spurs game on Christmas, which should be a lot of fun against Victor Wembanyama and company. Meanwhile, on the Nets side, they go out there and they make the first big trade of the NBA season. And they go out, and we knew they were going to make some deals. The fact of the matter is, yes, they've played well, but the goal is for them to set up themselves long-term more so than short-term. And they go out there, they make a deal with the Warriors, who have been sliding lately. After that hot start, they've just been a mess over the last few games. So they go out and they go out and they trade Dennis Schroeder to the Golden State Warriors. They get DeAnthony Melton back, who's an expiring contract. I don't think that really does a lot. But the Nets get Reese Beekman, who's a 2-way player from Virginia. People remember him from his college years. And they get 3 second-rounders. They get a 26 second-rounder, a 28 second-rounder via Atlanta, and a 29 second-rounder via Golden State. Warriors got back Miami's second-round pick in next year's draft. That's protected 31 through 37, so it's probably like a mid-second-round pick that the Warriors get back. Schroeder, I thought, did some good things with the Nets. You can clearly see that he was going to be one of those players that the Nets were looking to move. He's not part of their future, so you understand it. The Nets right now are 10-15. They would be in the play-in game if the season ended today. I love the fight they're showing for Jordi Fernandez, including the incident what happened in Memphis the other day. They lose 135-119, but the players were definitely behind Fernandez's back in that kind of situation, and Memphis is a good team. What was interesting about that, when you read Shams reporting, it sounded like the Warriors were also trying to get Cam Johnson, but the Nets wanted Jonathan Kuminga back, as they should. Cam Johnson is probably the best trade piece they have. So if you're going to trade Cam Johnson, you're not really just looking for picks. You're looking for a young player to build around, and Kuminga would have been that. So it's not shocking the Nets decided, hey, let's just trade Schroeder right now, and then we'll work on the other stuff as the season goes toward the trade deadline in a couple months. So Sean Marks makes his first big deal. Nets will host the Cavs tonight at Barclays. They will be at Toronto on Thursday, and then they will be home to Utah on Saturday. Jazz are 5-19. So the Nets have played themselves, I think, out of the Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey stuff, barring the lottery situation. But the Nets still at least can be competitive in a 10-15. I think they've done a lot more than people would have anticipated. To college football, only thing that was big in the college football slate this week is Army. Bryson Daly does end up finishing 6th in the Heisman Trophy voting. So congrats to an Army quarterback actually getting that close to making it to New York. Army takes on Navy, and of course, that's the big standalone game of the weekend. Everybody gets into that. As I said last week, it's on my bucket list of events to go to. And Navy just flat out dominated Army. 31-13 was your final. Navy led 14-0 midway through the second quarter before Daly threw a 23-yard touchdown. When you look at what Navy did on the ground, 277 yards. Army's held to 114, by far its lowest of the season. And you clearly saw what Blake Horvath can do. Look, Blake Horvath, when he was running quarterback for Navy, they were a different offense throughout the year. He had 2 touchdowns throwing the ball, and he ran it 25 times for 204 yards. Just a really strong game from him. Navy was 7 of 13 on third down. They ran a great fake punt in the fourth quarter to move the ball. And it's disappointing for Army. Yes, they finished the regular season technically 11-2, which is still a really good year, but it's kind of like that whole Michigan-Ohio State stuff. Like, if you're going to go 11-1, but your one loss, you're 11-2, but one of your losses is to your rival, it kind of diminishes the year in some retrospect. But the more disappointing thing for college football, I think, as a whole, when we talk about the transfer portal affecting bowls, and you saw the Penn State backup quarterback go to the transfer portal a week before the playoff, is Army was supposed to play Marshall in the Independence Bowl. Well, Marshall decides to opt out because they got too many transfers and they can't play the team, even though they reassured the Independence Bowl they were going to have enough players. So fortunately, that's the problem with college football, and I think it's eventually why what's left of the bowl system is ridiculous, because now Army has to get a new team. And I was already mad at the bowl situation for Army not getting to play a Power 4 team. I give credit to Louisiana Tech. They stepped up. They needed a 5-7 team to play. Louisiana Tech is local in the area, so they at least get a team to play against on December 28th, which I would feel really bad for Army players if they didn't get one more game, especially the seniors that deserve to kind of try to end this year with a 12th win. But that's just the indictment of college football. And I was listening to a quote by the Texas San Antonio coach, and it's not the kids' fault that the system stinks, it's the adults. I mean, the adults have not done a good job in regulating the system or setting deadlines or setting these things. And it's just been disappointing, but at least Army gets an opportunity to play in a bowl game. We'll talk more about that next week when we preview the bowl matchups more in detail. No local teams in bowl games this week, but if you're in Bowl Mania and you get the playoff this weekend, which should be fun. Moving on to college basketball, Rutgers gets a big win over Seton Hall, which would have been a disastrous loss if they did lose. But Dylan Harper hits a buzzer-beating 3, and it's kind of his first signature moment at Rutgers. That's the kind of moment that gets people noticing and why he could be the number 1 pick in the draft. They win 66-63 in the Garden State Hardwood Classic. Harper had 24 points, 8 of 13 shooting, 4 threes. Ace Bailey had 21 points on 9 of 15. Really, Rutgers won because of those two guys and because Seton Hall just doesn't have an offensive firepower right now. Their team is going to rely more on defense, and Shaheen Holloway talked about that he wants to see that same effort that he gave against Rutgers throughout the year, because the Pirates held their own and hung in that game very well. People thought Rutgers was going to wipe the floor with them. A couple big wins for the Scarlet Knights this week. They did beat Penn State at home last Tuesday, so they are 1-1 in Big Ten play. That was big. Penn State put up a good effort toward the end, but again, Harper 24, 12, and 5. Ace Bailey 15 and 15. So Rutgers is going to be in games because of those two players, and they'll hope to get others stepping up throughout the year. They will take a break from Big Ten play over the next couple of games. Their only game this week is Saturday at noon in the Never Forget Tribute Classic. They will take on Princeton. Princeton is 8-4 on the season. Of course, Zach Martini is on Rutgers. He's a Princeton transfer. The Tigers, they did lose to Furman a couple of weeks ago, but that's a team, of course, people remember Princeton's run to the Sweet 16 a couple of years back. So it's a team that can provide some kind of a scare, but we'll see if Rutgers is up for the challenge. St. John's, they will begin Big East play tomorrow. Well, they will take on DePaul in a battle of 8-2. DePaul has been, I think, one of the better stories in college basketball. Chris Holtman, yes, they lost to Texas Tech in the one big non-conference game they played, but with the Big East being down, you're clearly seeing Chris Holtman's squad. They got more firepower. They're much more consistent on offense. So St. John's going to have to come to play in this game. They did beat Bryant 99-77 back on December 11th. That was last Wednesday. They struggled in the first half, but they've had these explosive second halves that kind of bailed them out. They can't really afford that in Big East play, especially when the margin for error is slim. I mean, you think about it, Marquette lost to Dayton the other day. Butler's had some bad losses. Creighton still is in its – people like Creighton, but not the same as they did in the beginning of the year. So there's a lot of inconsistency with the Big East. So St. John's really is going to have to do some damage in the conference. They will host DePaul Carnegie tomorrow, and then they will go to Providence on Friday. Providence has been bad. They are 7-5. They lost to St. Bonaventure last Saturday at home. They lost to Rhode Island. They're not at home, the Mohegan Sun Arena. They beat DePaul in overtime, but then before that, they had lost to Rhode Island coming off a win over BYU. So Friars are inconsistent. That's a game St. John's needs to win, and it's on the road. You can get these quality wins on the road. That's what you're looking for. And then finally, to wrap up at least the locals in college basketball, Syracuse loses to Georgetown. Not really a strong game for the Cuse. Georgetown, I think, wins at the Carrier Dome for the first time, I think it was since 2016. They have not won at Syracuse in a while. And when you look back at that game, which Georgetown won 75-71, Jaden Epps, 27 points. This was the 100th meeting, by the way, between these two schools. Epps had 27. That was really Georgetown's best player. Sorber had 16, but Syracuse, Eddie Lampkin Jr. with 18. They had Davis get 15 off the bench, but they were just 4 of 16 from 3. You're not going to win games in this era of basketball when you shoot that low from beyond the arc. Cuse are 5-5. They will take on Maryland on Saturday at Barclays in the Nutrafol Gotham Classic. So these major, not tournaments, but they're these local events you still get here in the city. Kevin Willard, of course, former Seton Hall coach, comes back to New York City. There is a big event at MSG. We saw UConn beat Gonzaga the other day in the second half. UConn has been really good at the Garden over the last few years. There's no shock that they won that game. So this Saturday will be the CBS Sports Classic. Now, this year it is at Madison Square Garden, which should be a lot of fun. There are 2 games set to take place on Saturday. The first one is going to be number 24 UCLA at North Carolina. North Carolina is 6-4, but of course they still have RJ Davis, who's one of the better point guards in the country. We'll see if Carolina can pick up a big win. They lost to Alabama a couple weeks ago, but they hung on to beat Georgia Tech, blew out LaSalle. Carolina's got Florida tomorrow night on ESPN, so that should be a fun game. And then the second game is Kentucky against Ohio State. Mark Pope has done a really good job at Kentucky to begin the year. They're 10-1. They picked up some really signature wins. They beat Gonzaga. Their only loss is by 4 on the road to Clemson. Clemson, of course, has been a team that's made some damage in the tournament the last couple of years. So we'd really like to see what they've been doing. Ohio State is up and down. They're 6-4. They got blown out 91-53 by Auburn the other day. They got blown out 83-59 by Maryland back on December 4th, but they beat Rutgers. So Ohio State really was on this stage. Usually they've been a better program in recent years, but Kentucky at least get a chance to see what they can do. And like I said, with all the pressure Mark Pope has been under, should be a lot of fun. So the last topic we're going to get into, and it's a local story. Shout out to Angela Carter, who kind of brought this up to me last week, kind of brought me the idea to do this. Lake Placid could get the opportunity to host bobsled, luge, and some of the racing events in the 26 Winter Games. So the track that right now is in Milan Cortino in Italy might not be ready for the games. And if that's the case in the next couple of months, then Lake Placid is going to get these events. Now, we've seen, of course, last summer when surfing was in Tahiti instead of Paris, obviously there's no surfing in Paris, so they had to move these things. There is a precedent to do this. But Lake Placid has been home to some of the great events in Olympics history. Of course, everyone remembers the Miracle on Ice in the 1980s. In 1980, I should say. So they have a chance for Lake Placid to get a chance to host in 26 as like the plan B as of right now. I mean, that should be a lot of fun. And Lake Placid was chosen to be the plan B option over places like St. Moritz in Switzerland and Innsbruck in Austria. So Lake Placid did have some competition in this. It would be for bobsled, it would be for luge, and it would be for skeleton. So that has to be, that'll only be if the track is not completed by March. So they have a few months to try to get that track in Italy up to date. So that should be a lot of fun. So we have 2 more shows in the new year or until 2025. We'll have some more clarity on some things, hopefully. On the show. Again, the Yankees go out. They start their plan B. Max Fried, great addition to the rotation. Devin Williams, a great addition to the bullpen. But what's next? And how do they improve this offense that loses Juan Soto? You can't replace him, so they're going to have to try to improve within the margins to make things happen. And of course, the offseason is very long. You don't know when these things are going to change. Mets, we'll see what they do with Pete Alonso. Do they bring him back? Do they bring Sean Manaea back? This is probably the last big week, I think, for baseball. Usually you'll see that unofficial break for the holidays where teams got to take a back seat. We got the Hall of Fame voting coming up in late January. So you're going to have this like little window where there's going to be more moves starting to happen. We'll see if the Yankees and Mets do that. Jets and Giants, some tough games coming up this week. You'll get more clarity, of course, in the Jets GM search throughout the weeks. Giants, when they actually be more competitive in games, we'll see what happens with Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock, but the quarterback situation is just an absolute mess. While Daniel Jones is in Minnesota, maybe get a chance to go to the playoffs, even though Sam Darnold's doing all the work with the Vikings. Knicks, we'll see what they do over the course of this week. We'll see what the Nets do. Do the Rangers actually make a move at the coaching position? They tried everything else. Nothing works. But can they go a different direction? And then, of course, next week's show, we'll talk all the college basketball from this week. We'll talk bowl games. Look at Syracuse against Washington State. Sounds like Washington State might have a new quarterback for that Holiday Bowl. We'll talk Rutgers against Kansas State. And we'll talk Army against Louisiana Tech. We'll break down those bowl games in more detail. So from all of us here at IE Sports Radio, for a jam-packed lineup today, Mega 3 and Out coming up at 2, Carolina Sports Update at 5, Chicago Chi-Town Weekly. This is KC Sports, Set Point. So much going on the network on Monday, so stay tuned for that. From all of us here at the network, I'm Ricky K, saying have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you back here this time next week at noon. Till then, so long, everybody.